Hey everybody, and welcome to Click 3D. My name is Eugene Liscio, and this is the program where we talk about 3D technologies like laser scanning, photogrammetry, hand scanners, and we also get to talk about hardware, software, and occasionally we're lucky because we get to interview somebody as well. Now today what I thought I would do is talk about Artec scanners, and Artec has been in the scanning industry for some time, and they make some really great products, but nothing I've ever really talked about before. So today I'm very fortunate because I have an Artec EVA here. I've got a skull and a little setup behind me, and what I'm going to do is scan this and walk through the latest version of Artec Studio 16. And I'm not going to be going into all the special features and such, but I will be going over the basic workflow. In a subsequent video, what I'm going to do is talk about some of the very specific things that they've included. Two features in particular. One is an HD scan, or the ability to get some additional details out of a scan, and I may even talk about one or two other little things. So let's start off and talk about the Artec brand of scanners or whatever. Now they do make some different things here, so we'll just get some things out of the way. So they have a long-range scanner, and this looks like they call it the Artec 3D or the Artec Ray. Now the Artec Ray, I believe, is it's a repackaged Surfacer scanner. They have really great scanners. Surfacer makes probably some of the most accurate scanners in the world, so it's a really great option if you're looking for very, very high accuracy, definitely. They also have some desktop scanners and such. I'm not familiar with these. It's not something that I use, but for those of you that are, in this sort of area for metrology and that sort of thing, then this might be a good option. However, what I want to focus on today is the handheld scanners, and those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to go and speak to them in order of the size of objects that they're meant to scan. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the Space Spider, and I have some experience with the Space Spider. It's fantastic for really, really small objects. So little bones, if you're looking at tread patterns on shoes, so really, really small objects. Okay, so nothing too big. You wouldn't scan anything that was like 2 meters or 3 meters big. That would be a lot of effort and probably not the best instrument for the Space Spider. But when you have little parts, little archaeological parts, or bones and things like that, no problem. So something like this skull, that would actually be the right kind of model to do with the Space Spider. Now I'm going to do it with the EVA today, which is really not intended for this, but what I'm going to show you in another video is how you can recover more detail from the EVA than what you could previously because of their latest software offering, okay? But that's for another video. However, this is a nice practical example. I can do it from my desk here, and I don't have to mess around too much with the recordings and that sort of thing. Now, you can see here it's meant for small objects, okay? Accuracy up to 0.05, resolution up to 0.1, working distance 0.2 to 0.3, so 20 to 30 centimeters, and all the scanners capture texture, which is really, really helpful. The Artec EVA, this is a scanner that they've had for years now, and the interesting thing here is that it hasn't gone away. It's still around, and that's because it's super practical. It's a great little scanner, and because of some of the enhancements that they put into the software, people who own an EVA now get greater use out of their scanner. They can get greater resolution and such. So that's a really, really great option for a lot of people. Originally, I saw a lot of people scanning other people, so basically like making 3D models of people and then making miniatures, or you could do like sections of a car. You could do a whole bunch of different things with the EVA. And here you'll see that's labeled as an M, so that's for the size of object, medium-sized object. Accuracy 0.1, resolution up to 0.2, and a working distance of about 40 centimeters to a meter, which is not too bad. That's pretty good. Finally, the most recent offering that they have is the handheld Artec Leo. Now the Leo is a fully integrated scanner, meaning that there's no wires that are being tethered or anything like that. In fact, that's one thing I didn't mention. So I've got wires back here on the EVA. The Space Spider also has a power cable and a communication cable. It's a USB cable. And in this case, you don't have it with the Leo. And if you're scanning larger objects, you don't want to be worrying about cable management and stuff like that, or being tethered to a laptop. So you want to be able to freely move around, and that's what this scanner allows you to do. You see that it has an integrated screen here, and so it does a lot of stuff right on the device itself, which is fantastic. Now, so it's meant for medium to large objects. You'll see down here 0.1 millimeters for the accuracy and resolution 0.2, and a working distance of 35 to 1.2 meters. So it's very similar to the EVA, actually gets slightly or a little bit closer, and of course it captures texture. Now, one word about accuracy, and that is that whenever manufacturers state accuracy like this, like 0.1 millimeters or whatever, you have to be really careful with how you interpret this. And part of the reason is that the testing is done under sort of controlled conditions. And depending on the type of scanning that you're doing, you may find that you don't get as good of an accuracy, or maybe you don't get the kind of resolution that you want, whatever it might be. And so you have to be wary of this. So in the example or in the demo that I'm going to be doing today, okay, I'm just going to make a fairly fairly smooth looking model. So I'm not looking for super fine details. I will show you how you can extend the Artec EVA with the latest Artec Studio 16 software. But really the right instrument for this skull would be the Space Spider. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up behind me, and then we're going to get going, and I'm going to show you the software, the scanning, and what it is that I'm going to be doing here. Stand by. Okay, so I just did a very quick setup here at the back, and I've got the Artec EVA behind me, and if I move over this way maybe you can see it, but it's flashing away, and I also have a preview that's on my screen. So just to kind of give a quick idea of what I've got going on here, I have a skull, and so I'll bring this up to the webcam here, and so it's a relatively small object, but it does have a lot of fine details. Okay, and I'm going to scan everything from top to bottom, but I won't be too picky in terms of some of the details, because there's just some things we're not going to be able to pick up with the EVA. So it's very difficult to see, but in between the teeth here, there's some little spaces, okay? So there's like little gaps, and these little small gaps are going to be really difficult, so it's probably going to end up closing some of these gaps. There's some other little details at the bottom here, tiny little dimples and things like this, and I don't expect it to cover all that. But I want the general shape, I want some of the texture here to be recovered. And so what I'm going to be doing, or in my setup here, is I'm going to be using a little turntable. Now, one thing I'll show you on the turntable is this is two-sided. Okay, so there's a black side, and I've painted another side white. I'm going to use the white side, and I found that it actually is a little bit better. And if you look at my screen, if I point this at the EVA here, you'll see that I pick up all of the texture on there. Okay, so this is in preview mode, and it's looking pretty good. If I go to the dark side, you'll see that it's a little bit more difficult to get all that detail, okay? It just doesn't show as well. I can see some of the texture there, okay? But when I go on this side, right away, okay, you can see you pick it all up quite nice. So I try to avoid sometimes high contrast between the background and the actual object. So if they're kind of the same tone, then I can just use some editing tools to eliminate this. So we're going to be doing 4 scans, okay? So I'm going to be doing one like this. I'm going to be doing one up on the side, okay? So I'll put it up on its side and rotate it around. I'm going to do the other side like this, and then finally I'm going to put it back up sort of like normal like this, but I'm going to scan from a position that's higher up so I can get the top of the skull. Actually, I might even be able to get away with 3 scans. You know what? I'll try to do it with just 3 scans so I don't have to move around so much. Now, if you look at my screen here, you'll see that I have this kind of histogram here. And this is telling me sort of where all the points are falling in terms of their distance to the scanner. So you see if I move my hand really close, eventually I get sort of beyond sort of the depth of field, okay? So I'm too close here, and then as I go farther away, I'm kind of in a nice range, and then as I get farther and farther away, you see the part of my hand and the histogram is eventually just disappears. So we want this to be somewhere nice in the middle, okay? So this is where it is right now, is actually not too bad, right? It looks pretty good. and I can just go around and then do my scanning. Now I'm going to stop the scanner here in the preview, and I'll go through some of the settings. Okay, so as we go through here, it says capture raw HD data. Now this is something that we're going to do in a future video. This is just a basic workflow today, so I don't want to talk about this right now. Then it says features to track. So you can track just geometry, and there is a mechanism so that you can place targets on an object and then using photogrammetry, and it's a little bit more of a complicated process. We're not going to cover it, but geometry plus texture is typically what you're going to use. Now that's just going to be able to collect the raw data, but if you wanted to, for example, here it says real-time fusion. If I clicked on that, I would actually be creating the mesh as I'm scanning. So it kind of does it on the fly, but it's often recommended that you don't do that, okay? Unless you got some good horsepower on your machine, and even then you will take a hit in accuracy if you do real-time fusion. Some other things here like auto align new scans, enable automatic base removal. I'm not going to bother with these right now. Just leave the defaults up here. As we get down to scanning speed, if you are having a somewhat larger model or you're moving really slow across a surface for some reason, you may want to turn this down. Now I'm not going to get a big penalty by hitting 16 frames a second with this particular model, because it's going to be a real quick scan. I just got to spin it around and it won't be that bad at all. Now in the advanced settings down here, I'm just going to go down. It says my depth of field. Well, I'm going to keep the maximum depth of field, but over here I'm going to call this skull demo, okay, just to name my scans. And then it's got the texture brightness. So I'll use the auto right now, but I've often found that if you uncheck this and you use the slider, you can often get slightly brighter textures, or you can make it to your liking, okay? So, but for today, I'll just use the auto and we'll see what that gives us. This shows you your particular scanner. You can see you can do don't record texture, don't flash, don't apply flash. I don't want any of this. I'm just going to use the defaults here. And what else? What else? I'm not going to do any of this other stuff down here. You don't have to worry about it. But I do sometimes like to name my scans, and sometimes I like to adjust the texture. Those are probably the two things that I do the most. Also, if I'm not happy with the scan name, I can always rename it when the scan is already done. I can rename it afterwards, so it's not a big deal. Okay, let me go back to preview. Okay, so I've got the scanner set up. You can kind of see it behind me. It's kind of right behind me. I'm blocking it, but it is behind me and it's flashing, so it's picking up data. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to do this two-handed. I'm going to click on record on the screen, record, and I'm just going to move this around like this. And you can see my hand is caught on the or in the field of view here, but I'm going to just crop that out after. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to make sure that I get everything that I need, and even produce a little bit of overlap, no problem at all, like that, and I think that'll be fine with me. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop. Okay, great. So this is my first scan, and it's called Skull Demo. Okay, so if I right click, I can rename. That's not a problem. And if I double click on this, you can see all of the different frames that I have here. Okay, so you get into all the individual frames, and if I click on one and I slowly go down, okay, you'll see it's just like a frames in a movie as it moves around there. Okay, so a lot of different frames to work with. Now I'm going to back out of that because well, you don't need to do anything with that. You just need to collect the scans. So I'm going to do the other two scans, then we're going to do some editing, then I'm going to align them, then I'm going to fuse all the scans together, and then we're going to create a texture. Okay, but let's keep going here. So I just rotated the skull. Let me do a preview. And let me just check, preview, and record. And I'm going to try and capture all of this going all the way around like this. Okay, and I'm moving pretty fast. It's not doing too bad at all. So I've pretty much got everything that I needed right there. Perfect. And I'm going to hit stop. So I've got that scan. That looks good. And I'm going to do one more, but I need to flip the skull on the other side. Okay, so let me do a quick preview, and I'll have a quick look here, and that doesn't look too bad. Okay, so I could use this. That wouldn't be too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and preview and then record. Preview and then record, and I'm just going to pick up this data pretty quick, and I may go around like that. All right, so obviously if I only do 3 scans, I'm going to have some missing data. but that's okay. I think it'll make the point for what it is that I'm working with here. So let me go ahead and stop. All right, so I have 1, 2, and 3 scans here. Okay, which looks pretty good, and I can rotate around. Let me shut off the other 2. So that's what I've got. And I've got the teeth here. Okay, so I've got pretty much what I need. Now, if you're looking at this right now and you're saying, hey, you know, this looks really rough and there's a lot of these artifacts and stuff like that, wait till you process this. This is the raw data, so it's just picking up everything that it can. And once we process this, this is going to clean up enormously. So I'm going to turn all these 3 things on, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the scans. Okay, I need to do some work here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eraser tool, and I'm going to work with these one at a time. So I'm just going to leave Skull Demo 1 on. And what I'm going to do is go to Cutoff Plane Selection. And when I do that, if I hit the Control key, and I'm going to use the mouse wheel to make the selection larger, and I hit the Control key, and I just paint, just like that, and I let go. What it's going to do is it's going to create a plane. And by holding down Control and Shift and then the mouse wheel, I can lift that plane up and down. And anything that gets selected, I can perform an operation on. So I'm just going to go down a bit like this, and that will get a whole bunch of stuff erased, and that's what I want. I want to erase all that stuff that was there. And then to get rid of all this other extraneous stuff, I'm just going to go to a top-down view, and I'm going to use the lasso selection. I'm going to go Control, and I'm going to go around and just select all this stuff like this, let go. Now I don't want to delete this, so I'm going to invert it, and then I'm going to erase, and that cleans it up significantly. And I could continue doing this with like little bits and pieces, but I only have to get the major stuff. This actually cleans up really well afterwards. These little islands and stuff like that, they tend to disappear once you apply some of the other processing on it. So that one's good. I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is do the same thing here. So I've got the second one. I'm going to hold down the, go to Cutoff Plane, select a plane, lift it up a little bit, and that's good. Erase it. I'm going to go to the lasso selection. I'm going to go and select here everything that I need, and then I'm going to invert it and erase. Okay, it really cleans up a ton of stuff. And this little guy here I can get rid of. Beautiful. Good enough. Maybe this little guy right over here. It's pretty quick to do. Finally, the third one. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to click on this cutoff base plane, select that. Lift the selection a little bit, or lift that plane up. I'm going to erase, go down like this, lasso selection, hold down Control. I'm going to just move around really quickly, and you can see this gets to be super efficient. It's really quick to work with. And okay, I've got some more stuff down here that I can get rid of. And honestly, that's not bad. I mean, if I really get picky, you can get rid of some of this stuff over here, but I'm not worried about it. That's pretty good for me. Okay, so what I have here right now are 3 models that aren't aligned, okay? So they're just like a big mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto-align these to give it a starting point. So I'm going to go to the Align, all 3 are selected, and then I'm going to click on Auto-Align. And so this does this really quick, and if you have a look at it, you'll see that it looks pretty good. There's a little bit of a mismatch here, okay? But often what I do is, after I do the auto align, if I want to apply that, I'll go back to my tools, and this is where I do some more important work. And the first thing I'm going to do is global registration. So I'm going to click on that, and if I look down here, once it's done, okay, it just snapped in together. So I don't know if that was visible, but if you go back and rewind, you'll see that these models snapped in much closer together. Next, what I'm going to do is I am going to fuse these together. So there's something called sharp fusion here. Now there's different types of fusion. There's fast fusion and smooth fusion. If you use these two, you're typically going to lose a lot of data, or it may not be as accurate. So for the type of work that I'm doing today, I'm going to stick with the sharp fusion, and I'm going to have it go through. It's going to go through all 3 of those scans, look at combining them together and keeping basically the best part of the scans. So that'll pop up in a second here, and you'll see what we have. So you'll find that we don't have a lot of details here, and again, this can be improved with the HD mode that I talked about. That's going to be for another video. And but I have these little isolated sections here, these little islands, okay? So what I can do is there's a small object filter, and if I click on that, let me show you what happens here. If I go down and I click on apply, okay, they just disappear. And so it keeps basically the largest object, which is what we want. Now, if I go to the bottom, you'll see that there, okay, part of this wasn't scanned properly, so I'm missing some on that side. I should probably go back and add something to this, just to make it a little bit more complete. In fact, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut this off. Let me go back to the scan. I thought I'd get away with 3, but I think I'm going to need to scan this again. So let's do a preview here. Okay, let me set this up. I'm going to go from a slightly higher vantage point, and I'm going to scan this again. So just give me a second. Okay, so I'm going to record this one just like I did before, and I'm just going to slowly move around here, so I should be able to pick up more of the skull. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to integrate this one back into the model, and hopefully that'll give me everything that I need, just like that. And I'm going to stop this right now. There we go. Okay, great. So I need to edit this one just like I did before. And I'm going to get rid of this other fusion that's here. So I'm just going to right click on it, and I'm just going to go delete because I need to include this 4th one. So in the editor, I'm going to do the same thing. Eraser, cutoff plane. I'm going to select this, just lift it up a bit, and that would be good. So I'm going to erase that. And let's do the lasso selection just like I did before. Like that. That's great. Invert and erase. Okay. Now I'm going to have to align all of them again. So I'm going to have to go back. Go to the align. All 4 should be there, and I'm just going to go to auto alignment, and takes a few seconds. It's amazing how quick that comes together. That's pretty good. Great. Now I'm going to go back. Oh, let me apply that. Yep. Oh, I messed that up. I hit the wrong button. Let me align that again and make sure that I hit apply this time. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, looks good. I'm going to hit apply. Beautiful. Let's go to tools. Now let's do the global registration just to make sure everything is looking good. And this should be relatively quick. Okay, you see that sometimes there's just like this little fine adjustment that it does just to tighten everything up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, yeah, see, it looks like I got a little bit more there and a little bit more there, which is great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to the Sharp Fusion. I'm going to use that by default, just the default settings there. You can tweak that a little bit to give you a little bit more accuracy or a little less, but I'll have a look here as soon as it's done and see if we have to clean off any of the little islands. Actually, you know what? It didn't recover this little piece here. It looks like it's missing there as well, although this side was okay. So maybe when I did the side or something, it was missing. Let me go ahead and just continue with this for now. Probably what I'll have to do is do a slightly different scan to get that particular side. But let me just keep going. It's no big problem. So I'm going to do the small object filter. I'm going to go ahead and go apply, get rid of that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with remeshing. So if I look at this over here and I go to the wireframe, or if I go to wire over solid, you'll see that I have a lot of data sitting here. Okay, there's a ton of stuff here. And what I want to do is I want to simplify this without losing too much of the geometry. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go to the mesh simplification. I'm going to click on apply. I'm going to use the defaults. And what will happen is it's going to crunch through. And in areas where the skull is like flatter and has sort of wider spaces, you'll see that it creates larger triangles. But in areas where I have smaller details, it's going to have smaller triangles. Okay, so this is a nice way to do it. Yeah, I feel bad about that missing part there, but I think this will get the point here. I'm kind of cheating because I'm trying to go fast. So what I'm going to do here is, actually, let me shut off and let me go back to solid and texture. And now we have to create a texture for the model. So in order to do that, I'm going to go down to texture here. All right. And I'm going to just say, hey, I want to use these 4. So I'm going to select these 4, and I'm just going to use the defaults. Okay, 4096 by 4096 for the output texture size. If you make this too large, just be careful what software you're working with later on. And this is going to go through and basically collect the texture. And you'll see it's a little soft over here. Okay, a little bit missing a little bit more detail. But again, this particular scanner is not meant for these close-up details. If you had the spider, that would be even better. But one cool thing that I like about this is I can adjust this. Okay, I can do some things with contrast, right? Get a bit more detail out, get a little bit more brightness out of this if I wanted to. So that to me is looking much better. Okay, for a quick model. And then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and apply. And so now I've got my texture. So I'm going to leave it at that. There are a couple of other things that you should be doing, and one of them is going to be repositioning the model. So right now, if I look at this from the left side here, you'll see that this is nowhere near the left side. So I'd have to rotate this and position it again. So in the tools here, or excuse me, in the editor, you have a transform tool, so I can use that. And if I go to rotation, okay, what I can do is I can rotate this around depending on the view that I'm in. So for example, if I go to the top-down view like this, okay, it's obviously not in the top-down, but maybe I want to start with, you know, the front pointing this way. Then I can go to one of the sides, like left side, okay, and I can even that out like this. Then I can go to the front, and then I would rotate this around like this, so it's upright, something like that. And you'll see now the z-axis is up, the x is this way, and that's a little bit better. Okay, so if you look at the way it's positioned now on the grid, right, it looks a little bit better, and that's kind of what I wanted. So there's this, and of course there is exporting. And to export this, what I would do is go to File, I'd go to Export. I want to export the mesh, and here you have a number of options. You choose your location, you choose your file format, and they have a whole bunch. OBJ is a very popular one, PLY is popular, and then you choose your texture type, if it's JPEG or if it's PNG, whatever it is that you want. And you can just click OK after that, and you basically have a model that's exported from Artec Studio. So that was a little bit of quick and dirty work here. Again, taking more care or doing a couple extra scans would definitely fill in these particular areas. And there's some other features in the software that I'm going to get to in another video, and I'll probably use the skull, or I may use another example here. But I think this will give you a very quick and dirty look at Artec Studio. It's pretty simple to use. It has a lot of features. In fact, I think one of the strongest points of Artec is their software. Artec Studio is a very comprehensive package. It has a ton of features, probably some of the most features that I have seen in almost any scanning software around. So it's a really great option for producing really nice models. So that does it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Click 3D. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.